Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world. And welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I am your moderator, Charlene O'Hanlon, and I welcome you to today's event. We have a great event. I'm so excited about this event. We're doing it video, obviously, and going to have lots of really interesting stuff. But before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, just know you'll be able to access it later on demand. We're going to be sending out an email following today's event that includes a link to access the webinar. And we are taking questions from the audience, so if at any time during the presentation you have a question for any of our panelists, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question. And we'll take about 10 or 15 minutes near the end of the presentation and go through those questions. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and kick off today's DevOps.com webinar, which is Bridging Modern DevOps and the Mainframe. As you can see, we do have a panel of esteemed experts in the mainframe industry. Sorry, it was hard for me to get out. Experts in the industry who are going to be talking about mainframe and the Zowe project. So, David, can you advance the slide, please? I'd like to introduce today's panelists. Our first one is John Mertic, who is the Director of Program Management at the Linux Foundation. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar.
Excellent, excellent. To your left is Rose, let's see, I can get this. It's Sakach, right? Rose Sakach.
Yes. Hi,
She's the product manager over at Broadcom. So welcome, Rose. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And then to my right is Joe Winchester, who's an IBM senior technical staff member, so working on the Z systems over at IBM. Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks, Charlie.
Good. Well, welcome to today's webinar. And I want to give each of you a minute or two to kind of introduce yourselves. And so why don't we start with you, John?
Sure. Thank you. My name's John Mertic, Director of Program Management here at the Linux Foundation. A lot of where my role is to help some of the various foundations and open source projects we have here become successful, building on my 20 years of experience in the open source area. And for this webinar, my role is around the Director of the Open Mainframe Project, which is the vendor neutral home for Zowe.
Okay, great. Rose, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rose Sakach. I'm a product manager at Broadcom, CA Technologies. For the Open Mainframe value stream, I started my career many decades ago as an application developer, systems programmer on the mainframe, transitioned into a consultant for security and SCM tools. And I've been with Broadcom CA now for 10 years as a product manager.
All right. Great. And Joe, please.
Yeah, hi, Charlie. My name is Joe Winchester. I work for IBM in the United Kingdom in a little pretty village we have called Hursley. We develop a lot of mainframe products here with lots of four-letter acronyms that I won't go into. My background, I've worked on open source tools for many years, actually. I've worked a lot on tools for the Eclipse Foundation and helping to bring those to the mainframe. I've worked with the Java community process, helped to bring those to the mainframe, and I'm really excited about being part of Zowe.
All right, great. Well, I welcome you all for joining me today, and I really look forward to your insights. Today's webinar is the first in a series of 2 webinars we're going to be having on mainframes and the project Zowe. So our second webinar is going to be more of a technical deep dive, and it's going to be held on April 11th. And we'll be having Joe return for that webinar, as well as invite Michael Bauer from Broadcom to join us. So hopefully you guys will be able to join us for that webinar as well, for a little bit more, as I said, technical deep dive. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on today's information, though, and want to start by pushing out a poll to you guys. And you'll see it pop up on your screen here. But the question is, so what is your experience with a mainframe? You can select from you're using it now, you've used it in the past, or you have limited to no experience with the mainframe. So I'll give everybody a few seconds here to go ahead and submit your answer, and then we'll close out the poll and push it out, and then we'll get started with our conversation here. So do want to remind the audience also that you know, at any time during the presentation, if you've got a question, please just use the GoToWebinar control panel and submit your question. And looks like we have a good majority of folks who have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close out this first of 4 polls and share the results here. Looks like the majority of folks are using mainframe systems now, so that should be a great way to kick off today's discussion. I'm going to go ahead and hide the results here, but our first, you know, the one thing I'd like to start out with is you know, just the idea that mainframe has been kind of isolated, especially apart from DevOps. So why do you guys think that it has remained kind of that isolated platform in terms, especially in terms of the application development and operations? I'll let whoever wants to start the conversation.
I can jump in, Charlene. So from my own experience and from what I've seen from our Broadcom customers, and in my opinion, there's a combination of reasons why the platform has remained isolated, or sometimes we refer to it as being siloed, separated out from the other types of technologies. And I see this for several reasons. There's a cultural, a technical, and somewhat of, you know, the nature of how applications are being maintained that play into it. And from a cultural perspective, you know, many years ago, organizations aligned their application teams by the business that they supported. And at one point in time, you know, all of the applications were mainframe. And so the teams all consisted of developers that supported, for example, you know, a deposits application or a loans application or a credit card application, and they were all mainframe developers. But as the technology progressed and as we moved away from mainframe-centric applications and over to, say, client server and now cloud and mobile, you had to sort of interject newer skills and different skills, and they weren't necessarily joining the teams at the time. So you started to have disparate teams that contributed to a single application. And then, you know, with as time went on, I think the teams started to become more segregated based upon their skills, and it naturally sort of supported that segregation, that the mainframe skill sets were within, fell within a different group of people. And so we wound up with what we have, I think, in the majority of our customer sites, where we have, you know, a single application change requires the combination and coordination of multiple teams to implement. And the nature of outsourcing, I think, has also added to the geographic disparity and isolation of some of the mainframe developers and skill sets as well.
Interesting. All right, great. Joe, John, you guys have thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, Rose is absolutely spot on about the kind of DevOps, you know, isolation and the kind of mainframes within companies. And from a historical perspective, that's really led us to where we are today with our customers. I think we can just advance to the next slide as well. So we threw some sound bites onto this chart. A lot of people think of the mainframe as being dated. It's perhaps something that, you know, that one of their parents worked on, or they learned about from a sort of, you know, history of IT. That is absolutely not the case. You know, Moore's law has propelled a lot of the computing power of the mainframe, and, you know, well into where it now sits. You know, we're still in the 21st century, and just a few, I won't go into how fast it is, but a few stats about the pervasiveness of it. 70% of the world's data, vast computing platform. So the challenge, Rose was absolutely spot on, is how do we make it so the platform is thoroughly modern, thoroughly fast, thoroughly reliable and resilient? How do we make people who have created an infrastructure and an organization, perhaps over the last half century, keep up with more modern DevOps practices?
Yeah, and I mean, just to almost summarize a little bit of what Joe's saying there, I don't think any of us could have got to this point in our day without a mainframe. If you went and bought a cup of coffee at Starbucks this morning, if you happened to get on a plane to go somewhere, if you went and checked your bank account, that's thanks to a mainframe. And I think because those things, while they're so central and core to our society, they're often just sort of the givens. If those go away, we as a society collapse. And I don't mean to make it so stark, but it is a huge impact of what we are. And these are the machines that sort of keep those central pieces going. The trend that if I look across a lot of technologies that have gone over time and, cloud, different architectures and whatnot, I think two things are interesting. One is the menu of choices has increased. If you go back 30 years ago, you had a handful of vendors you got your technology from. You had a handful of technology choices. You picked one path, that's what you went with. Now the top organizations out there are heterogeneous by default. Either they've chosen to be there, actually either or, they've chosen to be there, or acquisitions and other software choices maybe before even put them there, but they see that as a competitive advantage. And it really helps position the opportunity for what a mainframe can deliver as something unique. But a lot of that message just has got as clearly out there, and it also hasn't kept up with the times of where modern development is. And perhaps as we learn more about Zowe, maybe that helps bridge a little bit of that gap.
All right, great. So I'd like to throw out a couple more polls just to kind of take the pulse here to see where companies stand in relation to the mainframe adoption. So I'm going to push out the first one right now. So the question is, how integrated is mainframe into your enterprise DevOps program? Fully integrated, highly integrated, moderately integrated, limited integration, or no integration whatsoever? So guys, go ahead and submit your answers, and I'll give everybody a few seconds here, and then we'll go ahead and push out the results, and then we'll do another poll right after that. So as you are submitting your answers, also a reminder again, if you have a question at any time, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions. We will, let's see, we will go ahead and close it out. Looks like we have a majority of folks who have submitted their answers. So let's share the results. It looks like the majority of folks have had no integration or have no integration, and followed closely by limited integration. So guys, this is, I'm sure this is level setting the conversation here, but keeping those results in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at our other poll that launching right now, which is, how big a problem is lack of integration between the mainframe and DevOps program? Well, it was almost like we knew that the answer would be no integration. Just saying. So you can see your answers here. You can choose from, it's a major problem, as in it's hurting the business. It's a minor problem, as in it has limited business impact. It's not a problem, or it's not applicable. So go ahead and submit your answers. And few more seconds here, and then we'll go ahead and close this one out, take a look at the results, and then we'll resume our conversation here. Okay, let's go ahead and close this one out, and I'll share the results here. Looks like the majority of folks say that it's kind of a minor problem, but they're followed pretty closely by it being a major problem. So very, very interesting to think about those results there for both of the polls. And conversations about Zowe notwithstanding in the mainframe, but do you guys see kind of the limited impact or the major impact? Does it seem odd to you that businesses are answering that with the fact that there are so many that have no integration whatsoever? I'm just curious. I mean, if it's
No,
either way, it's a negative. So
I would say it's not sort of a surprise. I mean, as I seem to talk to sometimes customers and partners in the area, Gartner uses a definition of mode 1 and mode 2 IT. Mode 1 being like, these are the people that keep business critical stuff up and going. Mode 2 is more the experimental, kind of the fast moving agile piece there. If you get into an organization that has mainframes, you have a mode 1A and 1B. 1A is all of IT, 1B is the mainframers, and they're just kept differently. Their organizations are put together differently, and there's a cultural thing which I think both Rose and Joe spoke to that exists there. Again, hopefully projects like this might be in a position to bridge.
Okay, all right, great. Rose, did you have a comment about it as well?
I couldn't agree more with John.
All right, great. So let's go ahead and move on then, because I'd really like to hear a lot about the Open Mainframe Project and Zowe. So tell me about it. Who wants to go first?
So maybe I'll set the stage here a little bit, and then I'd love for Joe especially being in the community and Rose being with a member of Broadcom to kind of share some perspectives here. And maybe skipping ahead a slide might be a little bit useful here. So the Open Mainframe Project was founded a few years ago with the idea of how could we bring together the various open source efforts that are happening around the mainframe into a cohesive group to drive together. Open source is not new to the mainframe. If we at the Linux Foundation, we like to trace sort of the genealogy of open source through the decades, and we can go back to 1955 with the founding of Share. And for those of you new to the mainframe parlance, Share is a technology group and event that was founded basically for mainframe administrators and operators to collaborate. They would share code back together, thus the term. It's an event that still exists to this day. There was just a Share event in Phoenix. There's another one in Pittsburgh this summer. But those are sort of the roots of sharing and collaborating within this community. So the spirit has always been something that has been a part of it. Add to that, as we discussed earlier, mainframe's a critical technology. Mainframes have been around for 50 some years. And, when this project was being formed, while there was open source efforts coming on, open source and Linux has been on the platform since the late 90s, early 2000s, and growing in usage. The efforts were very dispersed. They were very vendor-led. And there wasn't a lot of collaboration happening between different organizations. And the experience we have at the Linux Foundation, when you start to get that collaboration happening, when you start to share that R&D effort, when vendors have an opportunity to collaborate in a vendor-neutral way, technology flourishes. And we've seen this over and over and again in industry after industry. Cloud industry around Kubernetes and some of the web dev technologies there. Automotive industry with the rise of the infotainment system within vehicles. I was talking with presenters earlier here in the motion picture industry. Projects underway there to collaborate on the tools used for visual effects. When you see this happen, it helps this industry flourish. It helps bring new people to the table, and it helps drive unique technology things that no one vendor can do, because no one vendor has all of that talent together, but all of them can equally benefit. And that's really the thrust of what the Open Mainframe Project's purpose in this world is. Within there, we saw an opportunity brought to us by a few companies that were big in this space here, CA, Broadcom, IBM, and Rocket Software, that said, hey, we see this as a venue, as a host for an area of how can we do something unique here on the ZOS platform. Really kind of one of the first ever ZOS launched open source projects, like open source launched on ZOS natively. How can we do this to help bring a greater audience around here and really just drive industry collaboration, provide a way for their partners, their customers, other key vendors in the space to all work together, to all help share a common goal of providing a modern framework for interacting with the mainframe. And that's really the background here. In the Open Mainframe Project hosts other efforts in this area, such as anomaly detection. We have new ones that are also coming around the ZVM and other spaces as well, and helping support other open source on the platform, along with helping just sort of drive new trends in the industry, such as diversity and driving more women and underrepresented minorities, along with students and younger, kind of helping gauge a lot of that generational gap. So again, it's an effort, Open Mainframe Project, an effort to sort of bring that community together in a vendor neutral way. Zowe is a technology collaboration here for really driving a modern way to engage with your mainframe and the many ZOS tools there, and kind of addressing that thing we just saw, in that poll there, limited integration. Mm-hmm. This is what Zoe's here to do. So anyways, I'd love to have the technical experts comment more here.
So if I can go next to it.
Sure.
So I just want to share a little story. So when I joined the mainframe at IBM, my background was I was a PC developer. I used languages like Visual Basic and Turbo Pascal and Smalltalk. I knew nothing about the mainframe, nada, zip zilch. But I've been at IBM working on the technology. When I joined the mainframe, I was kind of a little bit terrified by it. Walking around my office, it was a bit like watching an episode of The Matrix, when Keanu Reeves, when there's lots of green on black scrolling. I wasn't a chosen one. I wasn't, lots of 3, 4, 5-letter acronyms. I found it quite a difficult environment to adapt to. So I was 30 then. I'm a little bit older now, as I guess you can see on the webcam. So
32 maybe at the most, right?
Yeah, good. So a lot of my and CA and Rocket, who are in this space as well, and many other ISVs I talked to, we're all trying to address this problem, so that we're trying to make the mainframe not special. A lot of customers come to me and others as well and say they want the mainframe to be non-prescriptive. So if my background at the time was PC tools, I wanted to be able to bring what I was familiar with at the time and work the mainframe. And that song is still playing, but it's playing at faster speed and at higher bandwidth now. So right now, if you look at what people want from DevOps, they want to be able to hook up, Jenkins and Git and all of these tools out there that people can just download. They're very fast, they're evolving very fast, and they want to attach all of these and dock them around the mainframe from an operational and development point of view. And that's the challenge that's being faced now. What's really interesting about working with John and others at the OMP is that what I did at IBM was I worked with a lot of very smart people, and we adapted some technology based upon Eclipse towards the mainframe and stuff, but we still created a less than perfect customer experience, because we did that. There was still vendor lock-in to the stack. So we wanted other ISVs to participate in what we were doing, and they said, I'm not going to do that, because you, IBM, when they looked down their technology stack, they would see their debuggers and their technology on top, and they would say, but IBM owns a piece of the technology stack. We're not going to play with you, because even though you're really friendly today, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, or we can't pay someone that's in Friday night and get it fixed quickly. So there was still a problem. So lots of companies created their own technology stack, and they didn't share what's basically undifferentiated heavy lifting, which was how can I get a really good set of modern APIs, a really good framework for extending, being able to dock all of these open source tools, and a really good extensible framework. And that's where we are now. Did any of that make sense? I waved my hands a lot, and that's normally a feedback.
Yeah. I just want to add, from, there's a quote out there that goes something like, and I don't think anyone has taken credit for this, so none of us is as smart as all of us. And, open source really is the epitome of that. And, Zowe being the first open source project on ZOS, For me, as a lifelong mainframer, it just changes the game. It makes it that much more interesting, that much more exciting, gives us all the opportunity to be a part of history, if you will. And here's, and I'm going to throw a couple of these out as we go through, but here's, in my opinion, here's an awesome Zowe fact. When the engineers at CA Broadcom started to work on this wasn't something that anybody asked them to work on. This was natural. This was organic innovation at its finest. These folks were trying to solve a problem. These engineers saw an opportunity to improve the way they worked, and they went about it in a very organic way. And we produced, our contribution to Zowe is the command line, the CLI, and the API mediation layer. Bringing command line, which is very cloud-like, very, very modern, very non-mainframe-ish, if you will, to the mainframe. And we also brought API first type of thinking to the mainframe as well, in collaboration with our partners at IBM and Rocket. So the fact that our engineers and the contributors to Zowe are truly just trying to solve a problem, and they're doing it naturally and organically, I believe just changes the game.
All right, great. So are there, is there anything about the Zowe framework specifically that we should be discussing that you guys want to go over before we kind of talk more about the mainframe and DevOps topic in general?
I could cover the framework really quickly. Just, I saw a few questions in the channel where some people have said, get to the meat of what we're talking about, which is DevOps. So maybe we should do that and open the Q&A a little bit more. So we've decided to organize ourselves in 3 ways. I think the most important thing that any computing platform has is APIs, application programming interfaces. So we have, if I read this chart upside down from the top down, so we have an architecture, and we use a technology that actually comes from Netflix. It's Netflix Zowe. As Rose said, that was donated by Broadcom to the Zowe project, or CA/Broadcom. So it's a very good industry standard API gateway. There's an API mediation layer we put around that. What that means is we provide that within the base, and we provide a number of services within the base. So you can get at jobs, files. You can, you can submit jobs. You can query things. Issue TSO commands, issue MVS operator commands through a RESTful API, Swagger-defined RESTful API. Now, behind that, there are some microservices, and we can go into the tech later if people want. But the value that gives is you have a single server to connect to. If you don't have that, if you're building a client server, multiple client server applications connecting to different backends, you end up with what I got yelled at once by a vice president of a company. He said, I hate, well, he didn't say I hate you. He said a few other things, but he said, my experience from my guys on the mainframe is choppy. Everything is choppy. They do a piece of work and then they switch to another one, and they have to re-log on, start a second application, perhaps go to a third, perhaps come to a fourth. This plays back to Rose's initial point about the DevOps. If we're trying to bind all these tools together, they must go through a single endpoint. You must be challenged with a single certificate. You must be authenticated once. So building all of this from the bottom up is very important to do. Then we split into 2 ways after that. We have a web desktop and a command line. Now, interestingly, the web desktop is and they both go through the same set of APIs. The web desktop is because people want things with a zero install client. You're in the airport lounge. As long as you've got VPN access to something, you can access, front ends, GUI front ends. If you or I log on to most of our business to commerce relationships we have with anybody right now, we're going through the web. Right? You can do email through the web. You can do your mortgage through the web and things like that. So we have a web UI. We have base function, and it's extensible. And then we also have a command line interface. And the command line interface is interesting. Some people criticize Zowe and they say it's not modern because it's a command line interface. They say you've gone back in time. But actually, it is the universal adapter because it reminds me of the arguments. I remember when the web first came along. The web is backed by HTTP. That's a hypertext transport protocol, and the web ships text. It's a really poor client-server interface. Technically, it sucks, right? There are much better program-to-program communication, but it's so universal because any server says, I'm just serving HTML across an HTTP backbone. Any client can attach to it, right? You have this incredible multiplicity of clients to servers all through a single place, which is the World Wide Web. So effectively, that's the kind of architecture that we've got here. It's very extensible. You can plug in microservices at the back end. You can plug in new command line modules. It's a node package to talk to different backends, and you can plug in new web UIs.
All right.
Charlene, does that make sense? That was I've got my arms, which is my feedback that I've loved.
No, it's great. It's great. I think it's a great introduction to the value that Zowe brings definitely to the mainframe. But moving along into kind of the major topic of DevOps in the mainframe, because I know it's kind of a hot button issue for a lot of companies. So let's talk a little bit about what companies need to think about maybe when they're adopting some of these tools. I mean, do you have any best practices or use cases or tool sets that you like to to tell folks about, or just what advice can you give, basically? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can take that, Charlene. So maybe the best way to respond to that is to sort of talk about who we're finding is using Zowe. Mm-hmm. We're still obviously in the early days. We just introduced 1.0. In addition to being widely used by our own development teams and engineers and our collaborators, we have a growing set of early adopters. We also have other mainframe vendors outside of the Zowe founders who are using Zowe for their own development. And that's sort of a clear signal to that Zowe is starting, people are starting to see some value in Zowe. And from our perspective, having the ability and wanting to use, things like task runners, having access to automated test tools, bringing mainframe into CI/CD pipelines. This is really, in thinking about, companies trying to get into this game and thinking about adopting Zowe. This is true open source, and what's nice is that anyone can go ahead and start using it at no cost. The process is extremely transparent. You can see what's going on both with the vendors contributing or individual contributors, and we have customers that are struggling with, okay, what use case is best for us? So where do we begin? The nice part about the whole open source world, again, is that you have the freedom to choose to start where it makes sense. Maybe you have a high visibility project that needs more testing, for example, and you don't know how to start to introduce more testing into your mainframe section of your application. Or maybe you're short-staffed and you need to transition an area that traditionally would be staffed by a person to a service, like as an example, maybe provisioning CICS read-ins or something like that. And this is one of the reasons why at CA Broadcom we are offering workshops to customers to help them grasp, the concepts of it and where they might be best positioned to start leveraging Zowe.
All right, great.
And maybe I'd add a little bit onto that. And I think, Rose, you did a good job of sort of very much articulating sort of the product use case. Why do you adopt it as a use? An interesting thing, and one of the key moments I remember from when Zowe was announced back in last August was telling the audience and talking to the people there that, this isn't a Broadcom CA or Broadcom IBM rocket project. I mean, they developed the technology, they initially contributed it, and I think the entire open source community is extremely grateful about this. But it's really a project for the community as a whole. And that there in and of itself, I remember sitting, if I'm talking to probably Charlene, your typical DevOps audience, that's sort of an expectation, right? They're used to looking at tools like Gradle and Puppet and things like that they have a seat at the table with. They know that they're not only the users, but that they're contributors to it. This is a little bit of a different thing that I think that world hadn't really thought about. And we want to be really clear here. Definitely use it, but part of this being out in open source is so that you have a seat at the table of directing where this goes and bringing your use cases in there, and you as a vendor saying, hey man, this is part of what we're doing already. Why don't we align and leverage this technology and contribute some of our great skills, talent, expertise to this effort here? So it's a very transformative, yes, on the technology side, but also just how this community comes together and sort of changing a little bit of that mantra there, where it's sort of waiting in a lot of times for vendors to solve the problems. Everyone in this community has a way to do it, and the DevOps world, I'm sure the average DevOps person is probably raising their hands in the air and saying, "Hallelujah! We've been waiting for this to happen for a long time because this is how the rest of the world works." This is the mainframe community coming along.
Okay. All right, great. So, I wonder then, what are some of the mainframe services that Zowe accesses that's going to be helpful for folks? Joe?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Sure, Charlie. I'll take a go at looking at. So, by the way, apologies if people we're getting some. There is a very detailed webinar on the 11th when we're going to deep dive more. So this one is pitched a little bit more high level web DevOpsy. So I'm gonna try and geek out and deep dive. And again, when my hands start waving, plug in on this. So there's a question about services. So we access JES, we access the MVS file system, datasets, PDSEs, etc. We have REST APIs for all of that. We have REST APIs for the Unix file system. Pretty much everything you can. The way I like to sell it to mainframers, we also have APIs to issue the command interfaces for TSO commands, MVS commands and stuff. We have a good set of core-based function in there. We also have a command line interface that lets you access all of that, and we also have GUI. We have a plugin for Visual Studio Code that lets you just work directly with datasets, members, so you can add in plugins for COBOL or source languages, linters for whatever you want to do. So we brought it up to that level. We're adding a lot more in. We're adding support in for getting the Unix file system working more with Visual Studio Code and submitting jobs and more lifecycle that you would extend. We also, within the web desktop that I talked about, we have a couple of explorers. We call them MVS, USS, and JES Explorer. So I like to sell it to people or describe it to people as, imagine ISPF 3.4, but in a browser GUI. Imagine ISPF 3.17 in a browser GUI. Imagine STSF in a browser GUI. That's the direction we're heading into. So that people who need to manipulate those subsystems can come along, and they don't have to be, like Neo in the Matrix. Is that right? Or anyway, but they don't have to understand the green screen world. They can drive it from, and they can plug in their own plugins. Now, it's not that doesn't, but we're also, that's our base, but we're not closed. So there are plugins. Remember, I had that architecture diagram of the microservices I was still showing now. So you can, if you're an Endeavor customer and you have Endeavor at the back end, you can get Endeavor. Endeavor has REST APIs, and then they come up through the command line interface as well. So you can work well with Endeavor. You don't have to move across. You can bring this world forward. There are plugins to work with Kix, where you can go to the command line interface and you can query Kix transactions and programs, new copies and fades. And there are plugins for DB2 where you can do DevOps commands. There are other ones. I don't want to get in trouble by announcing something that hasn't been announced yet. I think there's one coming for IMS. We've discussed that publicly, so that's in the pipeline. There are many others coming, and IBM has made various statements, and I know Broadcom have in the past, about shifting a lot of their tooling across. So people that have existing tooling will find over time that more of those will be accessible through the gateway, through REST API, and then you'll see those bubbling up into plugins for the command line interface and plugins for the web desktop. Is that
Okay.
an okay
Yeah.
answer?
Awesome.
But you're in good hands, because I work for IBM. We're IBM. We have a lot of subsystems that run a lot of work. We have some tools as well. CA Broadcom have a lot of tools. Rocket have a lot of tools, and we're all moving towards this as a unifying bit of tech.
That's awesome. That really is. And with that, it's a great seg, because I want to push up the last poll that we have, which deals with the tool areas that folks would like to see, hopefully. So I just pushed the poll out, which is, in which tool area would you most like to integrate the mainframe? So the selections are source access, task runners, build tools, test automation, CI, CD, or infrastructure management. And go ahead and submit your answer, and then we'll take a look at those answers. And then I would love to, at least for a minute or two, talk about the topic of security and how systems of records, and security standards, and how they all work together. So I'll give this a couple more seconds, and just a quick reminder, if you have a question, please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to as many questions as we can. Okay, so we have a majority, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll and push the results out. So it looks like the majority of folks are looking for CI/CD as a tool area to integrate with the mainframe, followed by, looks like test automation is the second highest. So that's really an interesting selection, I think. Infrastructure management, task runners, build tools, and source access are the final ones. So, okay, guys. So let's talk a little bit about security, because we know that that's definitely one of the big advantages of the mainframe over other systems. But so what happens here? I mean, how does opening the mainframe coexist with a lot of the security standards that folks think about when they think of the system of record applications? It's got to be kind of a conundrum there. So Rose, do you want to start us off with that one?
Sure, I can. It's interesting. I was at a customer site earlier this week, and inevitably the question around security does come up with respect to Zowe and CA Brightside, our commercial offering. And from my perspective, it's really quite straightforward. The command line, the plugins rely on APIs. The APIs require mainframe authentication. They completely uphold mainframe security. If you've got a mainframe security package running on your system, then those security rules are in play, and they are absolutely supported. And then, the off-host communication leverages HTTPS. So it really, it's as straightforward as ensuring that the security is in play on your mainframe.
Okay, and John, do you have any comments that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to add much more to the mainframe is secure. I mean, if I had if I had a longer line here of mainframe next to me and my brethren, they could go on days and days about mainframes that have never been hacked, pervasive encryption, all of the technology, yada yada in it. Here's the thing I will add: what the trends you see out there is that if you are looking to develop more secure technology and software, you're doing it through open source, which if you would roll back the clock a decade or two, it would not make any sense. But I guarantee, this audience here, who's a DevOps audience, probably has been around open source for quite a while, and they're probably all shaking their heads right now. So it's a very natural thing, right? I mean, if you have the source available, you can see the holes, you can see what's behind the black box, you understand what's going on, you have more experts there involved. And one thing that the Zowe project has really taken upon themselves to do as a part of being in the Open Mainframe project is achieving the Core Infrastructure Initiative Best Practices badge. And I don't know how much your audience is familiar with that. That's a core infrastructure initiative is another foundation here within the Linux Foundation, which really focuses on best practices in open source to help create more secure software. Part of them going through that rigorous process is to make sure that they have the best practices in place to deal with security issues, making sure they can be ahead of the game and have those folks on board. So this project's taking it seriously, and they're doing it through open source.
And your dog agrees 100%.
Or feels that they need to be the security thing here from my house. I don't know, but
there you go. Security? Well, that would be me. So, Joe, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love the dog. We have to have the dog, or somebody's coming in the room or something. Absolutely. So Rose and John, fantastic answers. There is no backdoor available through what we've done. We're running over HTTPS. We're actually just stepping our security TLS levels up in our next release. There is no backdoor. We authenticate through SAF, the security manager, RACF, top secret ATF2. So this is not an attack vector to the platform. Okay, we are not increasing the attack surface. In anything, as John said, we're reducing the attack surface because from the point of view of somebody in a corporate enterprise opening up the only port that anybody needs to access is we want to converge on the API gateway, as that is the port, and then all of the microservices behind them, the communication that occurs with those ports don't need to be surfaced anymore. So actually, looking at that architecture, it is actually a more resilient architecture to head towards. Now, some people have raised some concerns. I was at Share in Phoenix, where there's a lot of interest. There's a couple of things that they're bothered about, and I'll try and address them quickly to do with open source. Can anybody go into the open source and have a look at the code, and from that code work out some sort of attack vector? So, or could they, worse than that, could they sort of late at night, deliver some code into a build that introduced a vulnerability? The answer to those two questions is no. So we have secure engineering practices in place. We have a lot of governance about who we allow to commit code. We run a lot of builds within our pipeline. So we adopt DevOps practices as well as helping the mainframe community to do that. We're always looking to increase that. We pay a lot of attention towards that. So we're very aware. Some people have said they don't want to go to Zowe.org to just download something that they install onto their enterprise. So I know Broadcom recently just announced the fact that they would provide enterprise support for that. And without pre-announcing or getting in trouble with my IBM superiors, that's again something that we're looking at doing or collaborating with Broadcom, because what we don't want is somebody that has a commercial product with open source underneath to see that as some sort of weakness in terms of if an issue comes with a commercial product that's found in the open source, how can they deliver that and have the same warranty that the commercial product sat on top provided? So that's something we're addressing. We're looking to create an SMP installer. We're looking to do that in a way with Broadcom and the community as well, so that we don't end up fragmenting multiple installs on the platform, because that is the opposite to what we want to do. So there's lots of things in play here, but we are not increasing the attack surface of the mainframe. If anything, we are reducing it.
All right, great.
And Charlene,
yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to reinforce the point, Joe. Thanks for making it. We at Broadcom, we understand that our customers feel there's a natural inherent risk associated with using open source, right? And we're mitigating that risk by offering that 24/7 support for all Zowe components. We recognize the need. We've heard it from customers. We are committed to Zowe. We are committed to supporting Zowe. And we're happy to help you feel confident that you can commit to it too. So just want to reiterate that.
Great. I'm sure that that's a real load off a lot of folks' minds when it comes to open source in the mainframe. So, and security is definitely a main pain point that they're trying to address. So, awesome stuff. Well, looks like we're on just about 10 minutes to the top of the hour. So I want to go ahead and just kind of push us forward where folks want to learn more. Where do they need to go?
Zowe.org.
Zowe.org.
Zowe.org, and from there you will find links to everything that you need. Yeah, and everything we do in the open. We have a calendar, all of our meetings, anybody can dial into them, hear what we're planning. We have a Slack channel, as a picture of a Slack channel. We have mailing lists for people who go to Zowe.org and start from there. John, does that concur with what you think?
You got it spot on. Get involved in the community. Everything layer is there. We encourage you to check out the technology, provide feedback on the technology, even share with us how you're using it. Like if you have a cool story, like we had a gentleman from Viacom Infinity made an Amazon Alexa clone. He carried around Think in a box. It was great. That's built on Zowe, so you can talk to your mainframe. We'd love to hear stories about that. So as you have those, share it with the community.
Although that to me, that would be a little too close to HAL, I think, when you're talking to your mainframe like that.
I don't know. It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool. And I would also encourage everyone to check out some of the other efforts we have at the Open Mainframe Project, openmainframeproject.org. Zowe is clearly one of the flagship projects that is a part of the foundation, but we have a number of other ones, a number of other efforts, and just also efforts for those of you here who think of mainframers and may not have pictured people like Joe and Rose. There's more just like them, new, young, old, all over the place. And we have a whole even series that just talks about that and lets you learn a little bit about them. So definitely encourage you to check that out.
All right, great. Well, we've gotten a couple questions in, so I want to make sure that we're able to get to them. So let's go ahead and just dive right on into those. First question, is CA Brightside the CLI, or is it more than that? It was just described as a commercial offering, but I thought the CLI was available as OSS in Zowe.
Yes, so CA Brightside does contain foundational Zowe components, the CLI, as well as the API mediation layer. But there are also additional components included in the commercial offering. You can find details at ca.com/brightside. We have articles there, technical blogs, videos, lots of great information there.
Okay, great. We have another question here. Where is Zowe in the life cycle? Is it available for production? And when was it launched? It's a little background.
You want to take that one, Joe?
Yeah. So it launched on February the 8th, and I remember that date because I remember working late on February the 7th and the 6th and the 5th with a lot of very smart people to make that happen. So Zowe, so from a historical point of view, I think CA, IBM, and Rocket got together sometime early last year. We very quickly wanted to go to a beta program, beta, to validate what we were doing with our customers. We had a closed one with perhaps 20 customers. We started in March. We ran through till about August. Then we went to an open beta, and we had a lot more feedback and interaction, and we GA'd it. What's important about the GA release, first of all of the code in there is on Zowe.org. It's all released under what's called the Eclipse Public 2 license. I won't nerd out on what that means, but it means you're in good hands. John can nerd about on that. It's all on Zowe.org. It was all open source. It was a bit of a rush for us to make sure that everything was open sourced. On February the 8th, we launched it at Share. I've just come back from Share in Phoenix. Lots of excitement and buzz around that. It's available. Many customers have downloaded it. We have a lot of interaction with those customers. We're making improvements all the time. One of the big ones is getting more enterprise SMPE type installing and a delivery mechanism for PTFs and ACARs and making sure we do that in a good way. So absolutely, Zowe.org/download. You can get a driver. We have documentation, and you should be able to install it fairly quickly. A buddy of mine called Dan Jass gave a very popular talk at Share about installing Zowe. Dan is like 20-something, and he has very little mainframe. I don't want to, well, he's gaining in his mainframe experience, but he managed to get it up and running. So
yeah. Yeah, 1.0 introduced in February, 1.0.1 is now available, came out in early March.
Right, and our release cadence is monthly, so we're planning to release a new PTF release every month.
Okay, great. So let's see, next question. Will Zowe work with other mainframe third-party tools?
So it's a hard question to answer. There's a direct question which says, so it talks out a particular company. It says, will it work with this company's product? It says, will it work with FileAid? So I cannot answer that question. That question has to be presented to the vendor that owns FileAid, which in this case is CompuWare. They're personally, CompuWare are very aware of this product. I had some good discussions at the conference. It is our intention to try, and we will do everything we can to welcome and make the environment so that other tools can collaborate with this. Even within IBM, though, there are products that are already on a release cadence and already have a limited number of developers and committed resource. And for them to change that vector towards Zowe, they need to get the timing right for their customers and their businesses. But many of those companies, including CompuWare, are telling us what they would need for us to be, for when they're ready to do that. Some companies so we are doing everything we can to kind of bind with those companies. Rose, John, is that a good answer?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think you teed that up really well. I think the one thing I will add is one of the things the community is really focused on now that it's really got past a 1.0 release is how certainly any open source project, anybody can download it, anybody can use it, anybody can put it into a product, subject to the terms of the Eclipse public license too that Joe mentioned it was under. One of the things the community is working on doing is building out a conformance program. And the focus point on that is, just for the vendors that are out there that are saying, hey, this is a great starting point. We'd like to build an application on top of this. We want to take advantage of the growing ecosystem of, I think last I heard, close to 40 applications that are already leveraging Zowe in some way or another. How can we be a part of it? How can we make sure that we're interoperating with it? How can we make sure that if a customer is coming in and they're saying, hey, Zowe is our standard for how we're doing integration, how can I make sure my app plays with that as well? So that is something the community has been actively working on. If you're a vendor in this space and you're like, boy, this Zowe thing seems like it would make my life a lot easier, I'd want to get on that train. This is the time to get on board because that program is coming together and you'd have an opportunity to be at the front end of that. So definitely let Joe or even myself know.
And just to add, to that, if you're a customer and you're working with one of these vendors, ask them what their plans are with Zowe. Please, let's get them talking about it and get them on board.
All right. Great. Well, we are about 3 minutes to the top of the hour, so unfortunately that is all the time that we have for the question and answer period. But please, if we didn't get to your question, know that these folks are getting a copy of all of the questions that have been asked. So if we didn't get to it, I'm sure somebody from their organization will be more than happy to follow up with you offline to discuss your question and get you answers. Also, want to remind the audience that today's presentation has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, or if you just want to listen to it again, you can do that. We'll be sending out an email after today's presentation that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the devops.com website. So you can always go there. Just go to www.devops.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. And then also a quick reminder that we are going to have a more technical deep dive webinar as a follow-on to this one, and that one will be happening Thursday, April 11th. John, Rose, and Joe, thank you, all three of you, for such a great presentation. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank the audience for joining me today. And this is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.